Hello everyone, and it's tornado season here at Red Digital Studios. Today we watched Twister on this week's episode of Cinema Sitdown. We'll be right back after this quick intro. And welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Today, as I stated before the intro, we watched Twister by Jan de Bont, directed by Jan de Bont, and released in 1996. I am going to be your host today, Thomas Delzite, and today I am here with
Isaiah.
Cheon.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Jaden.
Welcome to the show, everybody. So I want to get your guys' initial thoughts about this absolutely phenomenally absurd movie.
It's definitely absurd. I went into it expecting it to be a lot worse than it actually was. The characters I thought were really great. By the end, the action is getting to the point where it's getting quite insane. It's like they really reel you in slowly, and you're like, oh, this might be a little more realistic, and they keep pulling, and then you're like going upstairs and crashing around, and there's like a huge, it gets crazy, but I really enjoyed it. It's a dumb, fun action movie.
Dumb, fun action movie. I'll keep that. Yeah, it's fun. I love the actions and all the choreographies and CGI maybe, and it looks like more than 2,000 films. I like it.
I mean, we talked about this before. I saw this movie when I was 9, so I've been seeing this movie at least once a year for the past 25 years. So the fact that you had me come on and see this, and I was excited when you wanted to actually watch this movie and do it for the show. I love this movie. Is there problems with this movie? Yes. Is there a lot of weird logic and you're just like, oh yeah. There's a lot of stuff here that's really dumb, but I don't care. This movie is awesome. It is so much fun. You have a smile on your face watching action. Even when some people get impaled or thrown, or you see a cow in the air, it's just the best time.
I really thought this movie was going to be a joke. And then as it went on, it had a storyline, the love aspect, the action, the flying cows, the awful graphics that I thought were not very good. But I feel like the movie definitely gave me a different, I didn't think stuff would happen that did.
Has a certain charm to it.
Oh yeah,
I don't know how to explain it. It's got a certain charm.
Well, I think that a large part of that. So this was also one of the executive producers for this was Steven Spielberg, and I think that has a large part of the reason that it has so much of that charm. But that brings me to something that I wanted to mention with the computer graphics of not being super great. But I think that for being from 1996, a lot of them hold up, and I think that the reason why is because the technology at that time was relatively new, especially for creating something entirely digitally. So they wanted to have it be much more practical and only use this computer-generated imagery when they needed to. For instance, showing the tornado, showing some of the more large-scale destruction that they did. But a lot of the stuff is shot practically, and it gives it a much more grounded feeling.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there were certain twisters that you saw that were definitely, you can tell it's CG, but the one at the end, the F5, that was pretty good if that was CG. That was impressive.
Well, I mean, it's coming kind of after Jurassic Park and all that. So, the CGI with the mix of practical is slowly being improved. Kind of during this time is kind of a big moment, when Jurassic Park comes out. CGI looks awesome in that. Even today, I just watched it recently. And, besides a few parts, I actually really bought into most of the digital effects. I mean, you say most of it was kind of done practical. 2024, I still think it looks pretty good.
Yeah,
I still liked it. It didn't take me out of the experience besides the one part where they show Earth and the satellite.
The opening scene.
Even in the opening scene,
it's pretty bad.
I was watching it and I was like, wow, this is way worse than I remember. But then they transition it into it being a weather channel. I was like, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh geez, this is gonna be kind of rough. But no, it's good, and all the tornado scenes look so great. I mean, even the first scene where he's going down that dirt path and they hit a bridge or something with the tractor on top. That's probably one of my favorite sequences from the. I just think that's such a cool thing because it pans down from the tornado. You see them and they're coming down. It's just I don't know. There's a lot of cool like cinematography things.
There's
that
a
happen
lot
in
of
this.
very well placed camera movement. The camera is always moving. It always feels very dynamic. It always feels very grounded up until the last probably third of the movie. It feels like it's always from like what could be a person's point of view. It's other than we get a lot of aerial shots of the group driving, but when the storm hits, it's usually fairly low down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that to me involves the editing. Like it's just, especially when the tornadoes are around, the action sequences, it just feels very quick. And even during like the conversation scenes when they're like being quippy with each other, like it's very fast paced. This whole film, it's only an hour and a half, which still is pretty quick, but it happens, like it just keeps going at a constant good pace. And I think that to me helps, because I feel like a movie like this that is kind of ridiculous, if you start to slow down even a little bit, like they did slow down a little bit in the kitchen scene when they're eating steak and eggs and stuff, but that's good conversation right there.
And even then, there's still so much happening in that.
Yeah.
There's so many people talking in different perspectives.
Exactly. So I think having that doing that edit the way they did, I think helps out with that a lot. To me, it helps out with the charm is what I'm thinking of.
I agree.
What about you, Che?
Oh, yeah, I agree. A lot of things going, and it is like quick. Cut. I like that.
Mm-hmm. What was your guys'? So for me, I'm actually curious about you. Like, you didn't say what your overall thoughts are, so you didn't really talk about what you thought about the movie.
I absolutely adore this movie. The worst part of this entire movie is when that same scene where the truck's driving in like the rut, it hits the bridge and they like hide on the bridge. Worst part of the movie is the destruction of that truck. That is such a nice truck.
Yeah.
It's such a good looking truck. I don't know it's a Jeep of some kind, but it's such a nice looking vehicle. And they kill it in the first like 25 minutes, and it's such a shame. Like I would much rather have had that truck be the truck that was actually
Throughout the movie,
Bill's truck, the red one. And I think the reason why is partly because of advertising. I assumed that they had a pretty good deal going with like, oh, advertise this great new truck. I assume that had something to play in it, but it also gives the perspective and personality of the vehicles of the two main protagonists, Bill and Joe, where Bill is much more modern, it's much more sleek, whereas Joe is a lot more like rough and tumble. She's not used to doing things by the books. She has just like her old, I assume what's probably her dad's truck that she's still using.
Right.
It's like she is very rugged and ready to go with anything. And I think that those two characters play so well together that I can't even be mad about the romance part.
Yeah.
I always thought it was strange, but I think it's fine in this movie.
I don't know about you, I think it works well, especially like, it's very comical when you hear them like bicker between one another,
Yes.
like you're sitting there laughing. And even going back to that scene where like the truck, gets taken off, even that spot where she gets up, where's my truck? And then like just the end of like just going, poof, like I laugh every time that happens, even though that woman's probably traumatized. I think that added a little bit of a giggle to it for me. But for me, my favorite scene, honestly, and that's still because I have a fear of it a little bit, but it's such a good scene, is the drive-through tornado scene.
Yeah.
Because to me, like, a tornado in the dark is probably very terrifying to have to worry about because you can't see it. During the day, it's no big deal. But I like the whole sequence of how that all, I like the editing, the chaos behind it, and it kind of really, it goes in that flow of the screenplay where like they're down their luck and they have to find a way to get back, to solve the problem of getting what they're trying to do. So,
Yeah.
what about you?
I feel like my favorite scene was when the truck goes through the house. That was just crazy. Like, why? Just went up, then
so-
just came back on the same level that it went up, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throughout the first probably 2/3 of the movie, all of the destruction is very grounded. It's all relatively, I would say, fairly realistic too.
Yeah.
Like there's a decent amount of practical effects. Some of the stuff feels a little goofy, specifically that drive-in scene where they're hiding down in like the little mechanic dip. And just everything in the world is falling like right on top of them, but not quite. That feels a little bit silly, but again, that's sort of in the later half when they really, as Isaiah put it earlier, really ramp up the destruction for. I think it's just shock and awe.
I think it's really just them being like, oh,
But
well,
up
we
until
gotta
that point-
ramp it up. This is
What
the
we had
last time.
seen was very like low stakes. Like things were getting destroyed, but everyone was always like fairly safe. It was not like most destruction movies now, or disaster movies rather, where they just show whole cities being wiped off the map for no reason, and they don't really hesitate on it for more than a couple of seconds, and just to show something being destroyed. Whereas this one, over the entire movie, we only see one like densely, it's like 500 people, densely populated area get absolutely devastated by a tornado, and it really shows and lingers on the effect that that's having on them, and how that relates directly to the protagonist.
Yeah, I even like the fact that when they go through Wakita to get to Aunt Meg's house, they Joe sees the little girl with the mom and dad, and they kind of sees herself in that little girl. I think those little moments there help me redeem some of the ridiculous stuff, especially like you already had a. Like for me, every time I watch it, I like Aunt Meg. She's really awesome. She reminds me of one of my aunts. But then seeing that happen to her, like you kind of get a feeling like you get invested in making sure she's okay. And I think that helps this movie kind of bring back its charm a little bit, because it makes you care at least a little bit about some of these characters.
And that sort of nicely leads me into something else that I wanted to bring up. So specifically with, as I wrote down, Aunt Meg and the boys, where they all very much so feel like they are a family, that it's a group of, I want to say like 8 to 10 people who all absolutely love what they do, chasing storms, and they are willing to give their life in a lot of cases in order to get the results for science. And a very big theme in this movie, even if it's just like the subplot, is sort of that like independent personal goal of like trying to help people with the scientific data, contrasted by the character of Jonas, where with his corporate money, using his equipment and knowledge that it's kind of alluded that he stole it from Bill and Joe anyways, and using it simply just to get money. And that contrast of like greed versus soul is so well encapsulated by the chemistry that all of the actors and all of the characters have with each other. It really feels like a family. And I'm very curious to see what your guys' thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good sequences, like at the house when they're all eating, and later on when they're like all helping her down like the roof and stuff. And even like from the beginning, I feel like this movie really helps establish all its characters straight to the point. You get who they are, and that's something that's missing from a lot of movies, because I feel like they try and do things so subtly that it just doesn't work for me. I don't care about the characters.
Yeah.
But this one, I saw like, I forget his name, but the he's kind of like, a weirdo. The clown.
Dusty.
Dusty.
Dusty, yeah.
From the first scene you see this guy, he's like, I get him. I like this guy. From the first scene you see Bill, right? They establish him as such a likable character. He's well known and respected. He's very knowledgeable. He puts his soul into everything, and so they just make you like all these characters so quick. And even with Jonah, I kind of like had this weird thing where like I was kind of like, okay, I don't really hate this guy that much, because like in the end of the day, he's still kind of helping people.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that moment at the end where Bill was like, okay, I don't need to be like super selfish about this. This guy's health is more important than anything else. Yeah. So I like that sequence. I thought him being included was a bit, I don't know. I felt like they just felt like they needed a bad guy, which I felt was a bit, I don't know. I didn't like it.
I don't want to say he's a bad guy. Like even like after watching this, like he's, the part that gets me is like they put him into as a character where he kind of just follows them. Like he has no like creativity like Bill does, or like the passion that Joe does. And I won't say like he's maybe going for the money, but you can just tell like when they always talk about, he kind of just follows them along and tries to capitalize on what they're trying to do. So that to me like doesn't make him an antagonist by any means. Just someone who's trying to, I don't know, maybe get a quick buck, but maybe try to do that, but he doesn't know how to. So he's not as bad as as they say he is, but they definitely put him in that hole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to get Jaden and Fion's perspective on this as well.
I feel like Jonas was he stole their like machine first couple scenes. Like, so I feel like you can't be a good guy to me if you're already stealing people's credit from the very beginning.
True, very true.
Especially because he just kept following them down every turn. But then the one time that you didn't, you got killed. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, speaking of the end and the house and the scene, like what I felt was like I was really into that character, the ex-wife. Was she wife? Just the fiance?
Fiance.
Yeah, that girl. Because like they're having like a big feast dinner together, and then she was like, okay, just sitting here, and then they're like beef and mashed potatoes and like something on it, and then she was like, okay, she had no idea what they are, and then it like reminds me of like my first time of like being living in America. Like it was like so
Steak and potato.
yeah, I expected that they're gonna like separate at the end of the movie. I knew that, but like at the scene, I feel really bad for her because I know how it feels like. So you guys are talking like other guys, but like I was really into her.
Right.
Yeah, I feel really bad.
Because she just like left.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
I feel like the timing of her leaving was so bad for Bill, because like you're seeing him go through all of this stuff, and then you're like, oh, actually, you love her. I gotta go. Also, taking your ring with me. Probably gonna go sell it. Because
she didn't like him that much.
It's sort of alluded that through a joke and sort of a jab made by Joe that Bill kind of rushed the commitment just to sort of spite Joe.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the way that she saw it, which, as we learned throughout a lot of the movie, is
Pretty true.
pretty true. Yeah.
She's kind of almost like a rebound in a sense, and
Yeah.
it's sad to say that but even then she said, like in that conversation scene you're talking about before the last we see her, she even says, I'm not even that upset that we're ending this. What does that say about us? So
Yeah.
I mean, it
for sure.
kind of made sense, but also she wasn't just talking about Joe. She was talking about the whole thing, because she was like, she can't compete with all this, all the stuff that she can clearly see makes him happy, so.
So before we wrap up today, I have one more thing that I desperately want to discuss, and that is some of the things that I found wrong with this movie this time around. And I don't want to trash it for these things, because I think at the end of the day it doesn't really matter. But I noticed a surprising amount of continuity errors, and I wanted to see how many that you guys were noticing, because I picked up on 4 that I wrote down.
One I
that were like regularly.
Yeah, no, one I definitely picked up on is like, you guys remember the scene where they're in the truck and he's trying to wire her up, like, put the headset on and that. Before he put the headset on, she already had a headset on. And then when he goes to put it on,
I picked this one up.
And when she goes to put it on, it's not there. But like before that, when he goes, let's get you wired up, and she's driving, you can clearly see a headset on her neck already. I'm like, okay, that's a little continuity error, but that's okay. But did you guys pick up on any?
I don't think I picked up on any.
Okay.
Yeah, on the first watch, I feel
fair.
like
Yeah.
it's kind of hard
That's fair.
to
We've
pick up
both
on
seen
that
these
because
movies
there's
Yeah,
so
I've seen
much
this
action.
movie a jillion times. So.
Yeah, so this is really your guys'
A couple that I'll
Ballgame.
just speed run through these then.
Yeah,
A couple that I
please.
noticed, it was the color of the sky and the weather conditions. That intro scene where they're introducing everyone in this, jaunty little crew. It's very like blue sky, sunny, and then they're like, oh, look off to the horizon, and you see it's really dark. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that does happen where you can see a storm coming in on the horizon, it's still very bright. But then over the course of the scene, it would just suddenly snap to being very, very dark in the sky and very, very dark tone. And that happened fairly consistently. This is not necessarily a continuity thing, but I just think it's funny how every time they get into the tornado just immediately disappears and it becomes blue skies again.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, there was a scene where Bill and like Dusty are together, and they're like looking out, and it's like the storm is just barely approaching, and they do a 2-shot, and there's like blue skies, and I'm like, oh, cool, like they still have some time to like prepare. They shoot back. The storm is just there. Shoot back to Dusty and Bill. It's completely like black behind them, and I was like, okay, this was like 2 seconds. Like I've seen a storm before. It's fast, but like you could
Not
watch
that
it
fast.
for a good couple minutes come to you.
The other one that I noticed is a pretty big one that happened throughout this entire second half of the movie was the condition of Bill's truck's windshield.
Yes.
During like the third tornado, right in the middle of the movie, a tricycle hits it and cracks it. But then depending on what shot they're on, it's cracked or isn't. And my theory is that they just, obviously they're shooting things out of order, so they can't really control that. Once it's cracked, it's cracked. And then later on, the crack is still there when they're going into like grand finale, and they drive. It's the tornado hits like a tractor dealership,
right
and there's
on
stuff hitting, and the combine, the chute hits the windshield, completely shatters it, and then it immediately cuts to a shot of Joe behind the windshield, completely fine. And I'm like, this seems like a big oversight. So anyways, those are my thoughts. What are your guys' final interpretations, final ratings of the film Twister?
Honestly, I love the characters. I love most of the action scenes. There's a few I have gripes with, but honestly, I'm gonna give this like an 8. I think out of a 10. It was really enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 7 out of 10. I love the actions, and also I love like some lines. It has humor. It's so fun. Like just like the cow was flying, and then they were like, oh, it's the same cow. I really like it, and 7 out of 10.
I'm gonna have to go with a 9. I think part of it is nostalgia for me. I saw this movie when I was a kid, and I absolutely loved it then. I still love it now. Despite all these issues, I think like you said at the start of the show, it's a fun watch.
Yep.
The characters are likable. It's cool, and there are a lot of very cool elements that they play with and do a really good job of keeping it grounded enough for me to stay invested.
Yep. If I have to give it an objective score, I'd say 6.5. But I don't care about an objective score with this one. This is, to me, it's a great fun movie to sure turn your brain off. Have a great time every time storm season. I give it a 9.5.
That's kind of high. I'm going to give it a 7. But that's being kind of generous for me. But good movie. Would probably watch it maybe one more time, and then never again.
Well, and then there are those who don't enjoy watching the movie. But that's okay. That's okay. Everyone's subjected to their own opinion. But that's all the time that we have for you today here on Cinema Sitdown. I have been your host, Thomas, and I have been joined by
Isaiah.
Cheon.
Josh.
Jaden.
Thank you so much for watching with us, and we'll see you next week.
I swear.